This is Glambition Radio, episode number 206 with Jennifer Kem, brand strategist. Welcome to Glambition Radio. I am your host, Allie Brown. I'm an entrepreneur, mentor, investor, and mom of twins. I love thinking big, doing different, and exploring ideas that disrupt the status quo, especially when it comes to women, because we are rewriting the rules for leadership, business success, making money, and changing the world. And we're doing it with style. Let's go. If you don't know Jennifer Kem, you are in for a treat. And if you do know Jennifer Kem, the conversation we're about to have is going to be just as good as you know it will be. And I'm excited to introduce her to you in just a minute. Quick shout out to 2 reviews my team pulled from iTunes. Thank you so much for taking a minute to leave the reviews. This is helping other women find our show in the madness of BS that you know is out there. The only business podcast for women, 5 stars by Kenzie DMT. I've listened to a lot of business podcasts over the 9 years of being in business, and nothing compares to Allie's. Over the years, Glambition has inspired me and introduced me to new resources and allowed me to see parts of myself in these interview conversations. And then the other one was from Jennifer M. Bailey. Allie is the best entrepreneurial thought leader I've ever come across within books, podcasts, and coaching. She challenges her guests to think outside the box and therefore challenging her listeners with each episode. I've binged this podcast until I ran out of episodes, and now I sit on the edge of my seat waiting for a new episode each week. Wow. Well, guess what? There's great news for those of you who are looking for more content. I have launched a live web show that is airing currently on Mondays and Thursdays at noon Eastern and 9 a.m. Pacific. It's called We Lead Live. It is broadcast simultaneously on my Facebook page, LinkedIn, and my brand new YouTube channel. Sorry, Sunny. Sunny's advice was for me to restart the old one, and I just couldn't do it. I had to blow it up. So we're starting fresh. I needed fresh energy. And I will put links to all of these in the show notes here. And that show is going to be a bit of a different conversation, really zoning in on decisions you need to make right now in all this craziness. So I'm offering my own perspectives. I'm also interviewing several of the top 7 and 8 figure female entrepreneurs I know who are not just surviving during this time, they're thriving. Asking them, what are they doing now behind the scenes? What are the decisions they're making? What are the strategies they're changing? Are they pivoting? Are they doubling down? Are they playing it safe? It's going to be this real business talk, Mondays and Thursdays, noon Eastern. Hope to see you there. And a quick reminder, today's show is sponsored by The Trust, the new private premier network for 7 and 8 figure women entrepreneurs. If you or a female leader you know is craving more powerful connections, elevated conversation, and really a modern platform for connecting with other high-performing women globally, visit jointhetrust.org and watch that We Lead Live show, because I'm going to be interviewing several of my members on that show. That'll give you a feeling for how powerful this group is becoming. Now, speaking of powerful, Jen Kem is, I'm not even sure how to describe her. I heard her name around the scene for a while and then had the chance to work with her directly on a project that a client of mine was running, and was just so impressed with how strategic she thinks. She truly is a strategic person. Everyone calls himself a strategist. She really is. And she's an incredible brand advisor. Her background's in real business, but she got there in a different way than you may think. A really interesting story. Grew up in Hawaii, just so many layers to who she is and the conversation we're about to have. And she utters a few words we have never said on the show. And I think we have pretty much said everything. But how she describes some of these affiliate programs out there is classic, and we had to leave it in. So get ready for a wild ride with Jennifer Kem. Jen Kem, where are you right now?
I am actually sitting looking out the window in the San Francisco Bay Area, stuck in my house like you are probably, Allie.
Now, for a girl from Hawaii, like I picture, running through the fields and the beaches, how does it feel to be locked up in the Bay Area?
It violates all my values. Let's just put it that way.
That is such a profound way to say that.
Yeah. I mean, again, I'm all with what's happening in terms of what we need to do as a collective, right? Absolutely 100%. And at the same time, I don't mind staying in because what a lot of people don't know about me is I'm naturally introverted. But when someone tells me I have to stay somewhere, now that's when we've got an issue. So I'm managing my value system around that.
Yeah, I alternate between feeling like some days I'm kind of like, well, this isn't too different from how we usually work, but it's so different. Like you and I were just chatting before the show, 10 years ago, we all went through the financial thing. Like that happened around us, right? But man, talk about the other levels now. You take away my physical freedom. You lock me up with my kids all day. I can't get my favorite type of chicken, like all my American abundance, neuroses are being triggered.
Oh my gosh.
And then lock me up with my husband.
And
I love my, I'm not even showing my nails. And then I love my husband, but he's here all day too. My mom's in the back. She's walking around with her mask on. I'm like, what the fuck is happening? It's, there's a lot. And then the educational disruption. It's funny because you and I were going to connect earlier and then the show happened to get scheduled for in the middle of this. And the first thing I want to ask you is, your work right now, how do you feel it applies to the current state of the union, in general?
Yeah, so when you are a brand strategist and a futurist like I am, the thing that happens in times like this, and again, this is an unprecedented time in history, so there's a lot of solutions and creativity required. But the main thing that we're well suited for and we're doing a lot of is the crisis management, the brand messaging, how to show up as a leader and not be taking advantage of people's, frankly, capture, literally now you have a true captured audience, no pun, no joke, and how do you become authentically responsible in that position when you have a business, whether it's a small business or even obviously our big global brands, how do you message what you're doing for your company in terms of your team? How are you treating them? What are you doing for your clients or your customers? And then obviously right now it's a great time for leaders to show themselves even more than they've ever done, to show that empathy and compassion and show how they're dealing with their personal life. Like you just shared, just I'm going a little stir crazy and I'm also still doing my work, gratefully so, because when think about, this, Allie, when you're in marketing and branding, it does well in good times and in bad times. And so I'm grateful for that's the career path I chose. And also at the same time, I'm watching for my energy because just like you, I'm cooped up in this house. And I've got a 5-year-old who doesn't understand why mommy is at home right now because he's used to going to school and then he leaves for school and I leave for work because we have a physical office here. And then I come home and we all come together for dinner. And now he's like, why are you up in the office? And why aren't you playing with me or doing schoolwork with me or watching Daniel Tiger with me? And so that part of life and how I'm responding and being available for clients right now has been modified. And so that's an interesting experience.
Yeah. Yeah. So I heard your name for a few years going back before we talked. And then I think I got to know you through a few clients of mine. You were working on either campaigns with them or, you're always working on important stuff and you're always impressive to me. So then, I was delighted when I finally got to meet you. I was delighted when we finally got to work together briefly when I was, passing through Hawaii and, coming back around now. I would just love to dive into a few of the things that I've seen you talking about online in the last year or two that I think were really just on the mark. But before I go there, how did you become Jen Kim? Go to a little your background because I think it's great for everyone to understand that you actually have, unlike a lot of the online scene, you have real business experience. You really done some powerful things.
Well, thanks, Allie, for noticing. And I've always admired your work. I call you the fairy godmother of internet marketing or marketing for women, period, and leadership. And so it was so great to work together a few years ago. And again, I just have the mutual respect is all there for me too. You're just amazing. And I Okay. So it's a long, winding yarn. Let's just put it that way. So I'll try to give you the cliff notes of my wild and crazy life. But I will say that I grew up in a town where doing what I do today was not likely. And what I mean by that is I grew up on a sugar plantation in a town, a tiny little town in the North Shore of Hawaii, where, it was very socialist thinking. You needed to fall in line, be obedient. I'm also of Asian descent, a child of immigrants. And so it was like the whole thing was about work hard, make an honest living, don't be too out there because you'll be ridiculed or bullied and all those things. And so those kind of mindsets were baked into me for protections. Because I can also say at the same time, I felt very loved by my family, but they didn't know how to grow a really weird girl like I was. I always say, like, the aliens dropped me in this town to teach me that I was supposed to do this.
It's a very like all for one and one for all family culture, right?
Right, absolutely. And I mean, my mom's biggest dream for me was to work for the government. She thought that would be the best job in the world. If I worked for the government, I don't know, maybe good things would happen because I would be extremely disruptive. But
you'd be assassinated.
Oh my God, for sure, right? So anyway,
I don't wish that on you. That was just a vision I had. I'm like, don't run for government. Don't run for government.
No. And so anyway, that was what I grew up in. And so I felt very lonely and misunderstood growing up. I became isolated. And I always tell the story that what saved me, because the things that they predicted about me in terms of don't put yourself out there, don't be too talkative, don't share too many big ideas. In second grade, Allie, in second grade, when your kids are asked or you were asked, what do you want to be when you grow up? My answer when they got to me, there was only 14 of us in this little Catholic school because everybody else went to public school. And my mom put me in private school thinking that could help me in some way, but it was like this little Catholic school of 14 kids, right? And the nun, Sister Fatima, God bless her, she asked everybody, that question, what would you like to be when you grow up? And all the boys, they said they wanted to be doctors and police officers and firefighters, right? And the girls were saying they wanted to be nurses and teachers. And when it was my turn, I got up and I said, I want to be the General Counsel of Coca-Cola International. That was my answer in second grade. So I think that gives you a taste of the kind of kid my mom was dealing with. Like, she didn't know what to do with me. And I got in trouble for that answer. I was put in the corner and I was such a, I loved being teacher's pet. I loved sitting in the front row and raising my hand and asking questions and being curious. And when I said that, it was the first time I got in trouble for declaring what my vision was for my life. Now, of course, that's how I'm describing it right now as a 46-year-old woman. But looking back as a 7-year-old, all I thought was, wow, if I say what I want, I can get in trouble. That's going to keep me down. And so it's actually a lot of that story right there is fuel for what I'm passionate about today, which I'm sure you're going to ask a question on that. But fast forward, basically, I say that like my best friends growing up were Dr. Wayne Dyer and Mr. Rogers, because in a world that I didn't understand, I'd go home and I'd watch TV and Wayne Dyer would talk about possibility. And he would talk about, you can, as long as you're specific, you can create the life you want. And I thought, oh, okay, that doesn't sound like anything I've ever heard before. And then Mr. Rogers taught kindness and generosity and that, there's value in being caring. And so I have taken those values and kind of like fast forwarded them to the life I live now. But in between that point, I didn't become the head attorney for Coca-Cola International, which is the general counsel. But I did become a brand strategist, and Coca-Cola is one of the biggest brands in the world. So I figure there's some type of tie there. But, I wasn't always a business owner or entrepreneur. In fact, I never thought I would be. Once I decided not to pursue law, and that's a whole nother story that has to do with my Filipino mom. So we'll talk about that on another show or something, on the outtakes maybe. But I decided, okay, I'm going to pursue a business degree because I was in Silicon Valley. I went to Santa Clara University and then I got my MBA at UC Berkeley. And I figured, okay, where's the opportunity? Typical branding and marketing person, right? Like, where's the opportunity for the career, right? And it was like, oh, I'm in the heart of Silicon Valley in the pre-2001 time. So I always tell people I'm not a spring chicken. I'm a seasoned chicken. I've been around these parts for a while. And I thought I was going to be the next Marissa Meyer, who at the time nobody knew who she was. But if I look back, she was kind of the person I would have wanted to become, I thought, right? And Marissa Meyer, for those of you who may not know her, is the former CEO of Yahoo. And she's really one of the instigators inside of Google when it was growing, and I thought, okay, I'm going to go and head for the corner office and become, CEO of a high-tech company. That was kind of my thing. And I said, if I can become a really good brand vision, I can become one of those CMOs that becomes a CEO. Because, there's three types of CEOs in the corporate world. There's the CFO type of CEO, there's the CMO type of CEO, and there's a COO type of CEO, right? And I feel like the CMO type of CEO is the most visionary. So I thought,
Absolutely.
okay, that's right. So I thought, okay, I'm going to become. And so I made everything happen to do that. And early on, Allie, I was 22 years old. I was a junior copywriter for Ogilvy. And what that really meant was I ran coffee for the account executive. So I didn't get a lot of writing in. But it taught me early on how messaging mattered and how it impacted and influenced us as consumers. And I became obsessed with human behavior because it really comes down to that, right? Understanding why people do things. And in one of those meetings, I remember the general manager and the head of the company, the president of the company of that district division of Ogilvy, she was a woman. And she was 33 years old and had 2 kids and a husband that she looked like she liked. Okay. And I was like, wait,
this chick has it all.
I'm like, you got the life I want, So in my performance review, here I am, 22 years old. And I said to her name's Mary. And I said, can I ask you a question after we'd wrapped up our performance review? And she was like, you've got a lot of potential. I can see your ambition. I can see your work ethic. You're going to do well in life, and I loved getting that feedback. And then so I said, do you mind if I ask you a question? And she said, yeah. I said, how can I get your job 10 years from now? And she said, I love when people ask that question. Not enough women ask that question, so good for you. And she gave me advice that I think is so potent for all of us today. And it really is. It had designed the way I grew my corporate career and then subsequently left corporate and became a business owner, is she said, you have to do the things and take on the projects that no one will touch if you want to move up fast. And she said, at first it's going to feel like you ate a shit sandwich. That's what she literally told me. She said, it's going to feel like you ate a shit sandwich. And you actually have. But in a world where people like us, women like us, are competing for a job that has only one spot for a woman, and 9 of those spots are with men sitting at the table, you have to show that you can create results.
Yeah.
And the only way to do this is stuff they won't touch. And it sucks for you, but it's going to move you up. And when I think of even Marissa Meyer, whatever people think about her, I think that's really what she did, looking back, and how she ascended her corporate career. And so that's what I did. I took that advice, and it made me scrappy. It made me learn how to lead teams. It made me learn how to enroll people into the big vision I had for the results we were going to create. It helped me negotiate better. And by the time I had concluded my corporate career, I took on a huge project. My last job was a district VP of marketing for business to business for Verizon. And I led a huge project that brought Internet Protocol TV to the marketplace in 2005. Guys, like IPTV, which is like the predecessor of Netflix. I brought that to market, and I took that job, Allie, because they asked me to, the corporate. They asked me to, because it was a crappy project and nobody wanted to touch it with a 10-foot pole. And I did it. And then when I went back to my old job in business to business, where frankly I was the most profitable division, the B2C, you know this, Allie, like B2C in corporate is always less profitable than B2B, but B2C is more sexy, right? It's got a lot more exciting advertising, whereas B2B is relationship currency, right? So I went back to my old job thinking I was going to be next in line for at least the executive VP position in Dallas. I was ready to move, like from Hawaii to Dallas. And they gave it to the guy who kind of rested for 2 years while I led that project. And that was the moment that I'm going to say what I said at the top when you asked me how I'm doing. That was the moment that I realized that my values were violated. I didn't even know what my real values were. You know what I mean? I had no idea. All I knew is, I had that inbred learning from growing up in that small town from my parents. Work hard, you'll get what you're due. And then I had the advice from Mary, who said, take on the hard projects. And then I still didn't get the promotion and the raise. I just thought it was so unfair, and I couldn't understand it. And I didn't even get I got a little pissed. Okay, I'm not going to lie. I was a little pissed, but actually it activated me. It activated me, and it made me realize that what I really valued was autonomy. What I really valued was freedom.
Do you
what
think
I really
that,
valued was,
sorry,
Mhm.
sorry.
No,
I bet there was
sorry.
this moment though, and I know I've had this too, like you kind of don't believe it's all a game. And like, so you're doing the right thing. And you're like, I know women say that it happens that way, but no, I'm going to work hard and show them. And this is how you do it. And then there was that moment, right? Then you're like, oh my God, no, this is the freaking game. It's like an 80s career movie.
Oh my God.
It just, I mean, that had to hurt the most, going like, oh my God, no, I believed that I could change the system because you are a
100%.
disruptor. And it was so outdated. But thank God, because that spun you in the new direction, didn't it?
Absolutely. And I tell a lot of people that my story isn't like that sexy, oh, she got pissed and then she left. Right. And I actually didn't. I had 2 young daughters at the time, Allie. I have, two kind of sides of my life. I wanted the full on like package. I wanted the marriage, the kids, the career, all before I turned 30. So, let's see how that worked out, because I'm no longer married to that man. And I have 2 older kids who now are in college, and at the time, in 2005, they were, 8 and, actually 5 and 10. And so I had to make very strategic moves. And so I took 9 months. I took half of my salary, I put it away, and I was not a good saver. So this is what I always say. Sometimes you don't really have to look at what makes you motivated in the way that most people say. Actually, what motivates me is when I'm violated. Like, oh, okay, I'm going to get more of a stickler on my savings. I'm going to put half of my salary aside. And I was making great money. I had, a $250,000 salary with a $150K bonus potential, which I slayed that every quarter because I wanted my money.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a parking spot that had my damn name on it. Okay. Like that was a big deal, right? I mean, my significance factor was like way up there. And so I took half of that money, and for 9 months I put it aside, and I said, look, for 6 months, I'm going to go ahead and put my money away, and then I'm going to resign on good terms, because what I wanted, Allie, was to make sure that if I failed at entrepreneurship, I could get my job back. That was like my strategy. So I still had this kind of pragmatic strategy underneath my risky plans.
I think it's very smart. It's actually very smart. It's not the renegade story that I was expecting, actually. But I actually respect you even more, because you're like, actually, it's a different game when you have kids.
Yeah,
Totally.
I think if I didn't have the girls,
oh my gosh, my 20s,
I
I miss that naivete. I'm like, I have nothing to lose, I have a lot to lose now. I have a lot going on. I have a family, got my mom here, so you went off on your own. And what was that? Did you start a business? Did you freelance? Did you consult? What was this next step?
Yeah, like I said, it's such a long winding yard, but you would think that I would have started, let's say, the business I have now, which is a consulting company. We help build brands. And so, but no, I didn't do that. Instead, I was looking for a disruptive product, because I knew that if I could get a disruptive product out there that people needed, I'd have a better chance of success. So what I did, Allie, I started to reflect, and this is a question I ask myself all the time, is what's out there that's not being served? Right? Period. And those are the services and products that make it, if you have enough business acumen to make it happen. And so I used to fly to Dallas, in my job a lot. Every 2 to 3 weeks, I had to go from Hawaii to Dallas. It's a long haul. And when I would come back to Honolulu, Allie, I would notice something, that the women on the plane had a carry-on that was consistent. And it was a pink striped bag that said Victoria's Secret on it. Okay. And I realized that in Hawaii, we didn't have a place to buy underwear. And I realized that every time I went to Dallas or the Bay Area or Vegas, I was buying underwear at Victoria's Secret. And I was like, that's it. That's what I'm going to bring to Hawaii. Because at the time, I read, I'm obsessive like this, Allie. Like I started studying the limited brands that owns Victoria's Secret. I mean, I started studying all of their SEC filings. What was their vision for the future? Why weren't they in Alaska or Hawaii? It's because they considered those 2 states international. And they said that they weren't going to come into those territories. Now, I also knew, Allie, they would at some point, because every company that's a disruptive brand in Hawaii does extremely well, even Alaska. Why? Because it's isolated. Okay. So I was like, even if they come, I can establish a base of loyal customers and sell the product and whatever. And here's the other thing, Allie, because people, I build brands for a living. I work with a lot of big companies like Verizon. That's kind of the comeback story too, because they became one of my biggest clients, is that I didn't have plans to go international. I didn't have these big dreams. I just wanted one store that made pretty good money because I was getting divorced too. And I needed to just have stability and also not make my mom feel better, frankly, about it, because my mom was losing her damn mind over the fact that I was leaving my job to do this crazy thing. And so, that's where I took big risk. I had that 6 months of salary put aside, but I remortgaged my house. I signed a lease. I built out a store and I bought a ton of inventory and I opened my doors. Now, let me tell you this. 2 weeks later, the other fairy godmother of business, that she doesn't really call herself that, but I do, is Oprah Winfrey, has this incredible episode where she's in Nordstrom and all these small boutiques talking about bra fitting and proper undergarments. And she also starts spotlighting an incredible brand called Spanx, right? That really put Sarah Blakely on the map. Mm-hmm. And guess what happened to me? My small little tiny store was sold out in 24 hours after that episode. People just came in, and I was already good at, branding and marketing. So I had a good opening, but wow, that was a catalyst. And I think that's an example.
So they mentioned your store.
No, they didn't mention my store.
But just the category.
Just the category.
Spotlighted.
And then you know what I did? Because I'm crazy, but good. This is what I do. And I'm sure it's like when you spotlight opportunities, I called the news stations and I'm like, did you see that Oprah just did this? I'm happy to talk about the power of underclothing and under,
oh my gosh, that's so brilliant. You linked yourself to Oprah and they're like, okay.
Yeah. So they're like, oh, and Hawaii wants to, they're so backwards that they were so excited to feel associated with this episode. And so my ability, when I really
thinking about it, I'm sorry. They're like, oh my God, she's doing something that Oprah talked about, and they're following you around town. But that's a brilliant example of the power of association and how anyone looking for PR, some of my clients right now, especially with everything going on in the world, there's so many things that they could latch on to get on the news right now.
100%. I call it the brand halo effect. If you can be in the halo of another brand that is riding well, it's great. And it's also a bad thing, especially, my whole opinion around internet marketing and affiliate marketing or bro marketing. I think that can hurt you too. You need to know which train you are, latching your caboose onto, right? And just be thoughtful and visionary about it versus just now. Yeah. And I think that's missing a lot in small business too, Allie. So yeah, that's exactly what I did. I couldn't keep inventory in stock. I got aggressive. I opened more stores. I was the first mover and the only company. We didn't even have a Nordstrom in Hawaii in 2005. We didn't even have a Macy's yet. It was just opening. So I really took advantage. We do have all those things now. And I did really well. I was an 8-figure company in less than 18 months and really being aggressive and I started to have global dreams. I was like, oh, I could blueprint this because this is a whole different bespoke experience that actually people are pissed off at Victoria's Secret not being, right? Because I carried all the sizes. I carried triple G cup bras, even. I carried things that no one could get. And I wasn't like Victoria's Secret model branding. It was, bespoke, high-end feeling experience for everyday women kind of idea. Yeah. And anyway, I got aggressive, but now remember the time frame was 2006, 2007, we were crushing it. And then came 2008 and everything started falling apart because nobody was going to pay $20 for underwear or $75 for a bra when they couldn't even make their house payment. And my biggest mistake, and why I have the company I have now, I went kind of back to my roots, is because I realized, wow, great idea. But what I was missing was the strength of financial reserves, right? And understanding how much cash I really needed to have in the bank to have such a high inventory and, business. And I love retail, by the way. Allie, you and I, we could shop for shoes all day long, right?
I've always had this fantasy of just selling stuff instead of consulting. It seems like an easier business. It's always grass is greener, right? And then people with inventory is like, I wish I could just offer services. And I'm like, I want to sell a widget. I want to, invent something and sell it and no one knows who I am.
I'm with you.
And just float in the pool. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm with you. And I think that I have those fantasies also daily, FYI, even though I'm in the services realm now completely, because there's parts of it that are just so invigorating. And, being passionate about something, like I found, wow, I really do care about us looking amazing under our clothes. I really loved what Spanx did for me. And I started becoming very passionate, but the business part of it sucked, right? Because it was like, oh my God, the employees. And frankly, it's hard to find great employees that are getting paid even $20 an hour. Well, we paid well, but it was just so much work. And I started to resent it. And then here comes the economy crashing down. And then there's a bailout for everyone who has money and a bailout for no one who doesn't, right? Like that's what's unprecedented right now, even though this is just, again, we don't know what's going to happen during this pandemic and after it. But what I can predict is, the one thing that's good is thank God the government's looking out for small business this time. I mean, it's still a cluster, right? Because they don't know how to disperse this money, right?
We don't know where this money's coming from
Right.
either. I think we only don't be surprised, everyone, if there's like a large tax bill next year. Like you can't just make money. But yeah, it's a very different, at least publicly, they want us to feel like they're taking care of everybody, right?
100%. At least, I mean, again, back to like mindset and that piece, I'm like, okay, but again, because I've learned too much to know better, right? I have a very pragmatic and skeptical view of it. And at the same time, I'm encouraging everybody, like, don't give up trying to shore up your financial reserves because it was the biggest mistake I made. And so anyway, that's what happened. I had to liquidate my company, even though I had total like peak and crash. I mean, there was no in between, Allie. It was the biggest boomerang, whiplash of my ego being at its highest high and my ego being crushed to a little pebble, right?
Did you have signs up like that everything must go?
All that stuff. Oh.
You always see those and like, you wonder if it's real. Like yours was real, like liquidating, everything must go.
100%. And I don't even have a friend from that world. And I had a lot of business owners who were friends. And this is actually how I became who I am now, I would say, is that, because your question was, how did Gen Chem come to be? I was always kind of the natural leader of my business friends who also had retail stores. And there isn't one person, and there were a couple dozen of us that we used to hang out, have drinks, once a month, talk shop, discuss ideas for advertising. And none of them, not one, has their own business anymore. They're all in corporation, every single one. So 23 out of 24 of us didn't start. But me, I realized I had to check back in with myself, Allie, and go, do I really want to go back to corporate? And I didn't. And I said, well, gosh, how am I going to make money after, like, I had to come from the bottom, totally. I had nothing. I had to actually, I had to get rid of my house. I had to move in my grandmother's house back to that tiny little town. It started back at zero. I had to move back to that 4,000 person town in a 1-bedroom little cove of my grandma's big old, and when I say old, 75-year-old plantation home with my 2 daughters. And all I had left was basically nothing. I didn't even have pride left. I was just catatonic, frankly, for 3 months. I was in the lowest I've ever felt of my life. And I also got divorced at the time. So it was just, my life was a hot mess. It was just hard, but it's also the best thing that ever happened because my daughter came out the porch one day when I was out there, and I'm just going to be I literally was subsisting on Newport cigarettes and green tea. I mean, I looked like I was 34 years old at the time. And I looked like I was 50 years old and falling apart, and my daughter, the brilliance of her, she's 10 years old. She comes out there and she just had it with me. She's like, girl, I'm done. She decided she was done. So she came out, she tapped me on the shoulder and she said, Mommy, you're Gen Chem. You can figure this out. It's time to wake up now. And that moment still, even when I say it, my throat gets a little choked up because for her to still see me, and she let me be, for about 90 days. And then she was like, okay, we want to eat real food. And it just woke me the F up, Allie. I just looked at her. I remember the moment so potently. And I said, you're right, honey. I am Gen Chem. What would Gen Chem do? And I realized that, oh, well, if I don't want to get my job back, I could become a consultant for them and still feel some kind of freedom. Because that's also sometimes a lie. People think that freelancers are entrepreneurs. I don't believe they are. But I was like, oh, at least I'll have some semblance of freedom. So I'll go ahead and try that. And they were thrilled to find out that I was available. That was the thing that I thought, oh, for sure, I'm going to be embarrassed. They're going to laugh at me. I had all these stories in my head. And the actual truth was, if you've done pretty well in your past life, people want to work with you, and I'm thrilled. You're back. Let's go. And so that was my first little contract, and it grew. This was in 2009. So since 2009, I started my company Chemcom, Chem Communications, and I went in freelance, and then I built a little team of product managers, and product managers in the corporate world are the ones that basically are the brand managers. They own the product, the P&L of a product, and they work with the marketing teams and the systems teams to do stuff. And then, so that's what Chemcom does. And then a few years later, those business owners that said to me, how did you do this? Like, how did you shift? And I said, there's education, there's mentorship, and there's a lot of mindset stuff that I had to do. And they were like, can you teach me? And that's kind of how Master Brand Institute was born. So I have this online and offline, actually, campus where we teach entrepreneurs how to perform, and build brands, not just businesses. Because people buy brands. That's the bottom line. They don't really buy the widget. What they buy is how you brand the widget, right? And so that's what we teach people. And it's been crazy. It's been a great ride. So that's why I told you it was a long, winding yard. And I think I took a ton of time saying it. But those are the big things that got me to where I am now.
Yeah. So when you came into, I think you and I once had a humorous discussion on, when you came into like this world, like the online thought leader, badass, bitch, boss, babe, planet. You had some interesting observations, which I'd had for a long time too. And I hadn't heard anyone though really pronounce them or enunciate. What's the word I want? Something like that, that you really nailed it. And would you mind sharing, like, kind of when you came into this world with your background and the work you've done, then came into this world, what you were seeing online, what did you think was going on?
Well, okay, I'm going to be provocative if that's okay, because I don't know how another way to describe it. I saw this bro marketing, and I remember you and I talking, Ellie, about how you were the only woman in Dan Kennedy's circle back in the old days, and you were like, look, I know that I can bring this information and make it more right size for how women lead, right? And you've always demonstrated that. And I was a little surprised when you told me that you were with Dan Kennedy. I was like, oh my God, it's so perfect that Allie Brown was able to bring that out, because you birthed so many online badasses, right?
I sat through all the dick jokes. I sat through, this was well before me too. Like you just gave an eye roll and moved on, and I suffered for all of it.
Tolerate, right? And so there's that bro marketing piece of it that it fascinated me, that women would get taught by bros to lead when they weren't leading. They were learning how to, market clicks, right? And steps, but not, it was so fascinating to me. So even like years later, when I wanted to develop my idea for Femfluence, that's why I hired you, in our VIP day, because I was like, I want to work with somebody who understands real business, real branding, real marketing, and that's somebody I can feel like I can respect. And I felt like there wasn't a model for that when I first came in, frankly, except for you. And this was in the early days, in 2009 and 2010. So I thought, gosh, that's interesting. And then what I also noticed is that the same behavior that I talked about earlier, when my mentor said to me, there are 10 seats at the table, you're lucky if you get 1 out of the 10. Yeah. That same metaphor applied to online businesswomen that I saw. And it was, there's only room for one of us to win. So everybody else fall in line and you'll get your turn maybe later. And I coined that term pink slime. I called it pink slime. And what pink slime means to me, it's a phrase to describe the toxic femininity we emit when our patriarchal conditioning is activated. And that keeps us from truly leading and thriving. And so what I mean by that is there's something built into us. I mean, you just even described it, being Dan Kennedy's group, right? It was like you tolerated all those dick jokes, and you're like, okay, fine, I'm here to get what I need, right? So that I can be me and do me. And the thing is that there aren't, without the right community, to your point, like, and thought leadership, and I even hate that word a little bit now, but they've made me hate it, but the right people to go, okay, there's the world as it is, and then there's this other world. And you have to toggle between the two of them. And I think when you're in the bro marketing funnels, I call it the affiliate gangbang.
I don't think anyone's ever made me snort on the show. I think you just made me snort on my own show.
You know what? I even said that to a bunch of bro marketers, Allie, who hired my company to help them grow their brand. And they were dying. They were like, oh my God, that is what we're doing. I said, look, I mean, I appreciate that you get it. I'm a woman, man. Okay, I really can appreciate it, you know? And they were dying, these bro marketers. They were like, oh my God, that is what we're doing. I'm like, I'm so glad you see that instead of being, oh, look at her. She's such a feminist. You know, she's a bra burner. I'm like, I'm not a bra burner. I'm 100% female and love being one and love being ambitious. And I think that, you know, so anyway, that's the thing. And then so what happens is the women they don't even know that they're party to the affiliate gangbang. They have no idea that they're being violated. So that's kind of my favorite word right now is violation, right?
Yeah.
And not taken in a negative way, just kind of being honest about, and I saw it and I was like, ooh, that's interesting. And it's because for some reason women think, and I'm saying this broadly, so please, you know, don't think I'm saying all women. It's not all women, but what I noticed to answer your question was there were many women who felt like there was only one seat at the table and that the only way to get successful was to become like a bro marketer instead of more like themselves, you know, and using marketing concepts like funnels and like sales. Those are all important. Good copywriting. Those are critical. And you don't have to be part of the gangbang to be the pimp. Okay. Like I don't get it. And so that's,
do you talk about this on other shows or is this just for me?
I'm giving you the special.
Okay.
Usually, like I gotta tell you, I do in my own groups like talk about it, and like I said, with a few clients, they were like, "Whoa, that's definitely a very clear metaphor
it
of
really
what's happening."
is.
I'm like,
it really
I have
is.
no other way to say it.
You know, I will say when I was getting started in the industry, there was this. I think there was a time, just like with women in corporate, which is, I feel starting to fade, but you know, it just, things take forever. But there was a time I feel like we each had to kind of prove stuff on our own before we banded together.
Yes.
And I think that happened in corporate as well. And it's starting to ease up because there are more spots at the top now. But for a while, there was like a weird period in, I would say, the early 2000s and even the early 2010s. I guess, can we say that now? Because it's 2020. Jesus.
And that's weird.
Yeah, they kind of felt that way. And what's interesting now is, gosh, that now you see there's all these like subsets. So you and I could do a whole show like labeling all the categories and giving them names along your themes, which would kind of get nasty probably. But yeah, and I loved when I first heard you talking about the pink slime. I think you were talking about an Instagram or a show or something. And I thought just, oh, that's such a great, it's such a great thing to point out because like, that's from our programming from cavewoman days. I mean, we stepped out of the tribe. You stepped out of the group, the family. I mean, you could die. You step up, they could kick you out and you could die. And so it's such an interesting time for women as we're, you know, we have no excuses now, generally the same opportunity. Some people are going to argue with me there. Like if you're in corporate, I can't comment on that, but like level playing field here on the ground. If it's apples to apples, you can do this. And there's still this weird tension. And so, you know, I'd like to think that's why I'm here and not selling widgets, that I'm here to help with that in some way in the grand scheme of my life. And I think you are too. Let's talk about the branding aspect now and what you're witnessing online from your perspective and being such an expert on brands.
I mean, you know, the opportunity to brand your business, brand your voice, brand your everything is obviously, you know, it's the easiest and the most concerning at the same time because social media has allowed the playing field to be flat, 100% flat, right? And so it's a race to who can, frankly, manufacture. And when I say manufacture, I don't have negative energy on that, you know, because if you think a celebrity became a celebrity just because, you know, they were cruising, that's not how it works. They have definitely built their identity and gotten help to do that using marketing, branding, public relations, et cetera. And so I think what people struggle with, obviously, is because I think we're talking to great people who are listening right now. And you can be a great person and still be very thoughtful about how you show up. And when I say thoughtful, I don't mean overthinking. I mean, being strategic. Like, how do I really want to be known now and in the future? And are you really thinking about that instead of just reacting and creating some type of tactic or like, I'm going to get great on Instagram or, you know, using a platform. And I think we do too much of that as a collective right now. And so I believe there are two types of brands that are doing well in the online space. One is the ones that frankly do manufacture. And I think that there's a lot of smoke and mirrors going on. And I can smell that because this is my work, And so I kind of really know who's doing it and who isn't. And I kind of go, and again, what I'm also looking for is, if they've manufactured a persona, where are they going with it? Because it might still be based in integrity, and they're just doing some things to make sure that their stories are relevant and all that. Then there's the flip side of branding, which is people who are going what I call the organic crunchy granola route, I call it, which is they're trying to test platforms out and see which one resonates. And I'm always like, start with you. Meaning, what's the place that even if you're uncomfortable, you'll show up more. So I tell people, if you hate Instagram, why are you on it? Or Facebook, even if you're, do the thing where you'll actually show up, because what branding is really about now is not about getting seen. Well, it is a bit obviously seen and heard, but it's actually more about not being forgotten, Allie. People poop out too fast because a tactic doesn't work for them. And I'm like, branding is a long, slow boil. It's like cooking the most delicious, stew you ever made, right? And you'll have these wins during the time that you're boiling, but branding is earned, and people they quit too fast because the tactic didn't pay off. I took this Instagram course and now I don't have my 10,000 followers or whatever it is. And I'm like, that's not really how real brands have grown. Starbucks used to be what I call crunchy granola, literally. It was a hippy dippy little store in Seattle, right? Where the hippies went and had craft coffee. Now they are the opposite of craft coffee, but the founder had a vision, right? And slowly but surely, and then they created a tipping point and then became Starbucks. And so I think that we can use bigger brands even too, Allie, as models for who we want to become. And when I say that, if you don't have a vision to be, say you're a coach, right? And you don't want to build a coaching business that's as big as Starbucks. I mean, I'd like to see somebody try it. But what you take more is, what was Starbucks clear on? They're not a coffee place. First and foremost, they are a real estate company, just like McDonald's, right? They buy property to be seen first, okay? Secondly, they created a movement called the third place, right? Which is they wanted to be a place that was the third place you chose after work and home. And they have been extremely successful. Now, as a coffee lover, I am devastated that their coffee sucks so bad. But it's a great place to get some work done and actually work with other entrepreneurs. They've created so many companies, Starbucks, and I think that when we forget, we separate ourselves as small business owners from what bigger models can teach us and translate that into how it would right size for our brand. I think we're missing that, or not enough of us are studying and then implementing that. And I think that's what we should be doing more.
I want to see more women. It was really interesting. After I kind of blew everything up that I didn't like in 2015-ish, 2014-ish, I had a little workshop here just for 25 women. I just kind of handpicked and invited. They loved that I was bringing in examples from Harvard Business Review and Wall Street Journal and like relating what we do to bigger businesses and lessons and stuff. And they're like, no one's ever showed us this or taught us to think this way. And I'm like, you have to think this way.
Yes.
You have to think this way. And ladies, if you're listening right now, stop getting all your ideas off social. Read business publications, subscribe to cool publications like Inc. or Fast Company. I'm sure you read all these, Jen. And just, it gives you different ideas. And then you'll get ideas from companies you wouldn't even think that you could, get a spark from, but it happens, and help you understand things more as well. And so now I do that now in all my workshops. I know you're big on having in-person events too. How's that going for you right now? I just launched a whole new network based on live events. Great timing. So we're pivoting. We have different, we're keeping it going. But yeah, I really feel that the women need to raise their game in how they're learning, where they're learning from, how they're thinking. That's going to change everything. Otherwise, they get stuck in these businesses that can implode, in the blink of an eye.
1,000,000%. I mean, it's an echo chamber in the wrong chamber, and so you have to think bigger. And I love that you're teaching women that. And by the way, even just on the offline stuff, I keep telling people that if you think offline business is a bad idea right now, wait till we can actually see each other again. I mean, the tourism industry, hospital, live events, I mean, they're going to be running to it. And so it really just proves that you need to have a balanced approach to building your brand. You need an offline component and you need an online component. You need both. And so now is a great time to look at both sides and say, where can I get ready for when that's going to happen? Because it's not going away. In fact, this pandemic is going to make people want to see and be around people more.
That's what I've been saying. So, like when we all see each other again, it's going to be like the most, it'll be like we emerged from under the earth, like after being like locked in a cave for months. And the same thing with travel. I was just telling Brett, I'm like, when we can travel, we're going away the whole freaking summer. Like we're just packing packing the car. We're going to go. Yeah. I mean, it's going to make it so special. And I think, the high touch is still where it's at right now. We have to be flexible in how that happens. Right. But man, the in-person's great. So this could be like a 3-hour show, by the way.
Right. I know.
I just love talking with you. We're on the same page on so many things. But before I ask my final question, can you share with everyone, where they can learn more about you? Anything that you'd like to share with everybody?
Well, yeah, since we've been talking about branding, and I think that's one of the things that people don't understand, or they think it's so important, or they don't think it's important. But I think the thing to remember the most is that your brand starts with you. It starts in the heart and the mind of the founder. And when you understand more about what your vision is and also your values and also, how you behave and respond and are motivated, that really helps you grow your brand. And so I have an actual diagnostic that I give to all of my clients, which I'd love to give your listeners today, Ali. It's called the Archetype Assessment. And it's free. So you go to masterbrand.me/Ali Brown, and you can take this assessment and find out your special mix of personality traits that make you as a founder the best visionary for your brand and how to use it in your messaging going forward. So I hope that supports everyone listening.
I love that. And I think you should now have a quiz to determine if you were participating in an affiliate gangbang. And to what degree?
That's going to be our new thing. I'm going to have to do like a parody. Oh my God.
Or some type of rap song, or I don't know. Right. Maybe you could fly down here. We'll just have some tequilas and have some fun. All right. Final question. I'd love you to share with everybody your 3 best pieces or 3 of the best pieces of advice that you can give for all the women listening right now. What would you tell them with everything going on and where their minds are at with their businesses and the evolution of everything? What's your advice for all of them?
Mm-hmm. So the first is you can't do anything really wrong. That's my first lesson. And that means that whatever's wrong is meant to teach you something 10x more valuable to you. I tend to look at what doesn't go right even more than what is working, because success leaves clues, and those clues are both clues, meaning both what didn't work and what did work. So don't ever dismiss what went wrong, because there's so much gold in those learnings. I think number 2 is, even especially like specific to these times, but always, is just know when you need to rest and also when you need to move. And knowing the balance of that. Don't feel any shame around resting, but I don't think you can sleep for 3 months if you have a business, right? So it's really about tapping into your own personal motivations and finding that, and then rest when you need to. And then when you're in your creative peak, don't ignore it, because the magic that's going to come out of that creative peak is crazy. Mm-hmm. So right now too, I'm just feeling that. And I think it's because there's a response mechanism in me that I've now acknowledged, and I love her instead of like resent her, which is when there's a little bit of crisis, which brand strategists help with a lot of crisis messaging, I actually get elevated into creative mode. And while everybody's saying relax and rest and pause, my opposite response, and it's really a response, not a reaction, is I'm actually feeling creative and in flow. And if you're feeling that, go for it. That's my whole, whatever that looks like, don't pause, actually press play. And then thirdly, I would say that therapy helps out a lot, and don't have any shame around it. Because to get through what I've been through, I highly recommend for women that we work with someone who, there's all this mindset and performance stuff, obviously, and you can hire great coaches for that. And that's epic. Mm-hmm. And I believe you should do that too. But on the flip side, if you're not dealing with the past stuff in terms of like releasing trauma or blocks or informed or inherited, behavior, it's probably keeping you from your greatest opportunity. So don't have any shame around therapy and coaching. So that's what I would
Is there a certain type? I know there's different types of therapists in therapy. Is there something you recommend for your clients?
Well, I've been working with my particular therapist. I don't mind mentioning her because she's amazing. Her name is Voj Smith, and her specialty, because I've done a lot of different things, traditional talk therapy, tapping. I've done all kinds of things, and they've all been useful to some degree. But the thing that's worked the best for me is Voj has this method called the releasing method, and it basically stirs up all the things that are keeping you from things, and then you verbally release them. And for me, it's actually worked very well the past 4 years in particular, and it's kept me in my creative zone. And so I think any therapist that can help you identify and then release it, whatever the releasing mechanism is that they use, whether it's tapping or whatever, look for that, because basically what we have to do is we have to let it come to the surface and we have to let it go. That's what, to me, the most potent therapy is we have to allow it to come to the, we have to be brave enough to allow it to come to the surface, and then we have to like let it go.
Yeah.
And if we do that, whoever your therapist is, if they do that, I think you're on the right track.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Oh, Jen, fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us. We're going to be keeping up with you online, and we'll have to do part 2 at some point.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Maybe in person.
And when we get this pandemic, when we're through it, I can't wait to see you and have a shot.
Okay. Fantastic. Take care.
Bye, Allie.
Bye.
Thank you for joining me for this episode of Glambition Radio. If you enjoyed the show, make sure you subscribe so you automatically get new shows every week. And I'd love if you left us a review. We are on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and other platforms. And I'd love to hear from you. Come join the conversation online. You'll mostly find me on Instagram, but also on Facebook, Twitter, and more. Just head to alliebrown.com. You will find them all there. And you can also learn about upcoming opportunities to meet in person. Glambition Radio is the elevated conversation for women leaders, and I'm honored you've tuned in.